And we're live. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon if you're in the States, or evening if you're in a different part of the States. Today, we're taking a look at the Corvus Belli Caledonian Force repack thing. Although, if I'm being perfectly honest, what we're really doing is a friend of mine bought these, and I promised I would assemble them for him because he hates assembly and isn't in a position to do it right now. And so, as a result, we're going to be using this as a bit of an excuse to unbox these, mostly because I can't assemble them if they're not in the box, and then get them assembled. So we've got the full purchase for the Caledonian Combat Force repack, starting with Beta because it had the coolest box art that I could put in front of the camera. So let's take a look. We'll pop some light on, donk, and see what we're dealing with. The goal is to get as much of this assembled as we can, with the intention, ideally, of being able to hand over a fully assembled army to Matty, who I'm assembling these for, and Infinity off this week. Good morning, Brandish, Nuka Ooze, Chan6097. Alrighty. Discard the useless husk. Now this is interesting. So, something that, I should adjust the light a little. Something that I wanted to actually pay attention to. One of the things people have told me in the past is that, there's no way Corvus Belli has spare stock. They wouldn't keep stock, they would just melt down. The metal is reusable, they can just melt it down and recast it. And I always had kind of an impression that they did maintain a small stockpile of stock, or they didn't recast things unless they needed the metal. And the first miniature out of this box proves that, proves my theory is correct. So this is a Cameronian Dog Warrior. Sculpt is actually nicer in person than some of the art depicts, but I don't know how well you can see that on camera, but it is oxidized to shit, which means that I'm going to need to bring out the trusty wire brush as part of assembling it, which is totally fine, but a model would not get this oxidized if it was recently cast as part of filling a special order. So, cool. I was right, damn it. They do have stock. But this guy, we'll trim off the flash, get in a little bit closer there, and start getting this together. We might organize everything. I'm just going to do a little bit of flash cleaning before we move on to the next. We probably have to do a bit of mold line cleaning as well. What's this? This looks like it's the base for a... This is the base for a Noctifer, but it's possible that they also use it as the base for a Cataran. I think they do. Yeah, that's the Cataran's base. That's going to be chunky to get together. And again, yeah, pretty heavily oxidized. Does this also plug in around there? This is just the Noctifer's stairs. So they cast some new pieces to form the Cataran's base. Okay. I'm so glad I have a flex shaft to do that kind of brushing. I don't know what a flex shaft is, but that sounds like a useful tool. I'm sure people have piles of shame and eventually need to open and replace a spare piece. Yep. Justice Dragon asks, so these are just old stock reboxing. Well, what we'll do as we go through is we'll just have a look-see. So here, for example, I think these are Cameras, so Galwegians. This is new cast. So these are, I reckon, yep, these are the Highlander, the 5-point irregular Highlanders. This is new cast. That's nice and fresh. There's no oxidization of the metal. So these will have been cast as part of the army pack, whereas this lad, old over here, will have been he will have been old stock that they wanted to move, which makes like perfect sense. There's absolutely nothing at all wrong with running a deal like this to clear some stock. You cast a few things to make up the difference. People who wanted to get into Cameronia are happy. Like, it works. It's nothing wrong with it as a commercial model. But a number of people spent some time telling me that, oh, they don't have old stock. Why would you do that? They just melt the metal down. Limited lifespan notes that, yeah, they keep stock on hand because they had a Drago that was years and years old. They opened it, was missing a small piece. Yep. And we're getting some different names for the pile of shame. We have the pile of aspiration, the pile of pile of potential. Okay, so a little bit of organization I think is going to have to happen here because these are metal miniatures. So we've got one head that looks like it goes on this gentleman here. And then, yeah, so we'll have to do a little bit of dry fitting to figure out what goes where, but there's some greys. So they've packaged this all up in a slightly weird way. So here's one example. See if I can avoid cutting myself on stream. This is a Cataran. This looks like slightly older stock based on how it's oxidized. Nice single piece assembly, goes together like that. It's actually a really cool sculpt. And there's just another Galwegian in the same blister pack, I guess. Bit weird. So I'm going to have to find all of the bits as we go. Here are the arms for the Cameronian. So let's get him together. That'll be productive and it'll clear a little bit of space. Oh, metal miniatures. Metal miniatures with flash like that. That's fine. Alright. Cameronian, get over here. What I don't know is whether or not Matty wants these pegs left on these. I would be inclined to get rid of them. I just don't know what his basing plan is. I might just snip them off completely. Alright, we've got the Cameronian's axe. Any other flash there? Yep, tiny little piece. This is not going to be as quick to go either as stuff like Mountain Haven, which needed relatively little cleaning, because they are metal models. Cameronian's chain rifle arm number 1. Chain rifle arm number 2, and we'll need to file down some of the bits and bobs there. But worst case, I hand these over to Matty. He does a little bit of cleanup before he primes them. Oh, okay, let's grab a file. Things in the chat. Out of all returning armies, do you think they'll get a special box? Which stands out if I could only pick one? And then, what is the oldest model in my collection? Technically, it is a Warhammer Fantasy regiment of handgunners. It's the only regiment in my Empire army that I kept. And I would have been... No, actually. Well, that regiment's probably the oldest. But I think predating that in terms of how long it's been in my collection, we have some War Machine models that I kept for sentimentality's sake, same as I kept the handgunners and the Empire stuff. I don't have... The only thing I've ever owned that would have been older than that were some 3rd edition Space Marines and Eldar, which have long since gone into the West. I need a round file. Just addressing the mold line a little bit here. The raking light, always useful if you're like looking to find mold lines. You can't see what I can see here because the reflections happen at a different angle, but I'm just holding these things up to raking light, which is light that comes in at an angle. If you ever like looked at your floor and gone, ah yes, that's clean, and then you've shifted your angle and gone, oh crap, I need to vacuum. That's because of raking light changing what you can see. Okie doke. Ooh, unreleased Crocmen. Someone mentioned that they've got some of those. Is that the old, like, meme staring in 2 different directions? But borderline meme kind of trooper. That goes back. Okay, now we've got here, this is a little bit of a bugger, we've got a fairly large mold injection point that's in some muscle. So I do need to get that down to a nice smooth. Okie doke. Now let's have a look at the Cameronian himself. A couple of different bits and pieces of flash, nothing unmanageable. Just let's get a nice, like, decent organic curve on the kilt, I think. Okay. All right. Because I'm going to need to get these things onto bases to hand them over to Maddie, I am going to clip. This is like a mold injection plug, but it also serves as a connection point to the base. That went flying and ricocheted off of 2 different walls. But just so I can glue these onto the bases and hand them over to him so he can play with them. I'm not going to drill out those bases, so I think this will be fine. He can yell at me about it afterwards if he wants. Now, those pieces are together. However, in the interests of being able to get them together properly, what we're going to do is we're going to take a wire brush and stab myself slightly, but just clean off the oxidization, especially on the contact points. And it's going to get little filings and crap everywhere, which I'll vacuum up later. But by doing this, we make sure that when we glue this together, we're not gluing an oxidized surface to an oxidized surface, because if you glue an oxidized surface to an oxidized surface, the oxidization, we can just see I'm lifting the oxidization off with a brush, which means that you just don't have a secure bond. When you glue oxidized surface to oxidized surface, the oxidization will just come loose neatly, and the model will break much more easily. Same applies for priming. If you're ever dealing with metal miniatures, even if they're quite new out of the box, it's just worth your time. This is like $2 at a hardware store for a pack of 3, which I've talked about on the channel in the past, but we'll do the same over here. Just clean that up. And what you can generally do is once it's assembled, clean the contact points, and then you can just go over the whole thing with a gentle wire brush. And what that will naturally do is you don't waste too much time. You just hit the high points then that are likely to be contacted by our grubby hands and where paint would wear. Okay. We'll do a really quick dry fit. Metal is never quite the same as plastic in terms of tolerances. Seems fine. Let's go. We've got about 2 hours to get this all done, so move nice and quickly. Get that in there. All right. Crocman with the cigar in hand. I actually don't. I probably do know the model, but what I didn't know was that it had a cigar. So, question about what army, legacy army now, would I most want to have a re-release? Well, we've already had Toha, and I can't imagine they sold terribly well. This is another one that they would never do, but the N3 Morat miniatures. I actually really liked the N3 Morat miniatures. I like them more than the current Morats. And so classic Morats would be pretty top of my list if I didn't already own a whole bunch of the models. But I do, so they're not. That would be very close to top of the pile. I've left the bases underneath the thing. Yep, there we go. So if it's not them, NCA, yeah, look, NCA are the classic choice. You can get quite a lot of NCA in bits and pieces, but the bolt sculpts are just like, just do more bolt sculpts. Those things are rare as hen's teeth. Okay. I'm just leaning in over the camera to make sure that that's pointed in the right direction. Yep, cool. Hands blocking the thing. Oh. More Tauha, NCA. There's how many armies are there these days that otherwise are in that like category of things that aren't released or are out of date, and which things that got re-released and which might be worth them doing? There can't be that many. NCA leaps out as well. But like Shazvaz got modernized, Morat's got modernized, Akonti had their re-release, Pano had their re-release, Corregidor are about to have their re-release. So there's not too much left that, like, if you really wanted it, you wouldn't have access to in some way. There's quite a bit in terms of like just Panoshianian stuff that they could do, but alrighty, now we're just gonna get this axe into place. I'm gonna get some glue on my fingers doing this. Done. Cool. Actually, I'm not enormously satisfied with that bond, so we're just gonna nib a little bit of super glue, but just capillary action will take care of it. Just to add a second contact point. And I'll even use a little paper towel to wick half of that away. But we're just adding the tiniest extra bit of contact point between the arm and the axe, just so that if something bumps that. Right, one down. Lovely. Actually, 1 second. Alright, so sip of tea, move on to the next model. We might do the Cataran next, I think. Clean up a little. Move my bin around to where I can access it. Alrighty, we got a little bit of bendy barrel syndrome there, but this should be a fairly easy job because it's 2 pieces. Love me a 2-piece assembly. A lot of flash on the gun. Flash that you have the, like, is this part of the miniature or is it flash? And then you clip off a sight or something. Bought a box of bolts at the end of N3 when they were meme useless and have been very happy. Yeah, that's a stocks buy. God, I remember back before marksmanship existed, back when it was like bioimmunity. Yeah, except that it was bioimmunity the bad version. What did bioimmunity used to do? It was like, oh god, I can't even remember. The old version of bioimmunity before the N4 version was, gosh, it was like some sort of vaguely useless defensive ability against attacks that targeted BTS. It was like immunity viral or something. God, that takes me back. Old N3 profiles and what they did. Back when stealth was inherent to martial arts and was hugely abusable in fire teams. Alright, bit more flashing to remove off of this lad. To be kind of careful there, but I think that's just a pointless nubbin. But again, there's muscular texture that I don't want to just like clip into or file down aggressively. I do like this though. I didn't realize this is the, actually don't know. This is a Cataran. It might be an older or a newer Cataran. But the sculpt is really nice, where it's doing this thing where it's resting its gun over its knee, but it's not holding it two-handed. The other hand is up. It's I'm not gonna be able to show it on the camera, but he's got his arm up and he's like pulling on his collar like he's talking into a lapel mic. They're like sort of, you know, take the shot, or I have him in my sights kind of thing. Although I should do that in a Scottish accent, but I'm not going to. Yeah, once again we have flashing over a sleeve that is meant to be, that's actually not even a sleeve. I think he's bare-armed, which means we have to be pretty gentle. But we're also going to have to be careful if we brush this one after the fact, because the barrel is metal and a tiny little bit bendy. But this should go together okay. Brass brush comes out. Again, the connection points are all just relatively simple. Alright, dry fit. Dry fit is okay. Not perfect. What's it doing wrong there? Feel like... So the little issue that we've got is that the recess where the stock and barrel go into there is a good fit, but not a perfect fit. But I don't think I can do anything about that. So, glue we go. And then we have to find the base for him and get him into that. Well, I might just do the base as a sub-assembly and leave it to Maddie to decide how he wants to base this guy. The Cataran base is iconic, but... Okay. There we go. Cataran. That glue holding? Yes, it is. Lifted for just a second there. a classic sculpt. Now let's find his base and get that together. Okay, Justice Dragon. Coming from someone that owns an Ulam, your point is moot. M-O-O-T. I'm going to correct your grammar. Um, when you describe a point as moot, that's spelled M-O-O-T, and it refers to something being hypothetical. So a moot court is an instrument used for things like training lawyers and legal graduates, etc. M-O-O-T, and it's a practice court, a hypothetical court. And you have sort of similar uses of the word elsewhere. But when you say the point is moot, it's spelled M-O-O-T. Probably not fantastic for viewer engagement doing like grammar correction. I'm going to do it anyway. All right. So I think this is the Cataran's base, all just as one piece. And this is one where I can afford to be a little bit rough because it's just like ruined stairs and stuff. But it is hilarious to me that this is literally the like this piece is the Noctifer's. That's the Noctifer's stairs. And they have cast, at some point in the dusty past, they cast extra bits that like bolt onto it that then form the Cataran stairs, which is like, I get it. I get why you would do that, but also it's hilarious for some reason. It's very much earlier 2000s, bootstrapping ourselves kind of miniature design. Fit there is pretty good though. Alrighty. So Brandish says, been keeping them on bases with blue tack because you want to prime your minis with an airbrush and practice learn how to use it. Airbrush is a super useful tool to have in your repertoire. I actually, so that dog warrior that I've got glued in spot over there, if I was the one painting that, I would airbrush it on that base and then I would snap it off. Because super glue is still fundamentally pretty brittle. I would snap it off and then I would move it to a different base that I had built for that purpose. That's how I do basically all of my stuff. Super glue is not it's not difficult to cause a break in super glue, so you can easily just, like, I could snap this off now very easily. The legs are all one metal piece. And we're now talking about the the decision. The use of the word moot and the definition. You might find other definitions of it, or I might be using the word very slightly incorrectly. The main thing I was pointing out was just the spelling, moot rather than mute. It's one of those, it's like nonplussed is one of those little words that entered the public lexicon incorrectly. And yeah, do we, well, okay, so that does kind of lock in place. That is so, I like the stairs behind it, but let's get these and take a look. This might be a decision for Matty rather than me, whether or not he wants to use this second piece, because we're we're overhanging the base a little bit there, boys. All right. How much more do we overhang the base if we put the full? Oh yeah, that's a bit. Yeah, good point to whoever in chat raised that maybe that's a bit much. Yeah, that's a bit ridiculous. I don't mind overhanging off the back. What we will do, because I don't know how Maddie wants to base that, is we'll glue this down gently, and then we're going to just blue tack the Cataran into place so that Maddie can make a call as to how he wants to do that. I promised that I would assemble these, I don't know, a month ago now, maybe more. And I don't mind it at all. I figure I can do a stream or something, and Maddie utterly detests assembly. And in any case, he's got some stuff going on these days that makes it difficult for him to do stuff like this. So he's a fantastic hobbyist, but I'm very happy to pick this one up. Alright, so it'll be something like that. Ah, that's a terrible connection. Just lining up to make sure that it's got the gun in the right direction. Yeah, that's already overhanging the base significantly. Yeah, good call to whoever said maybe don't fully assemble that. Some glue. He's in place there. Gun forward. Cool. Yeah. Alright, so we'll save that and Matty can figure out what he wants to do with it. He can just fail to use the entire thing if he wants. The best grammar writing advice that you ever got was to use get got in a sentence so you can rephrase it and instantly sound better. Yep. Yeah, so Brandish, let me find an example. So, this is a pre-prepared base for my my combined army. I do need to put this onto a base like so, and then it's ready to go. You can put a little. I put a little bit of white on this base so that when I pop the clear acrylic in there, it shines a bit more. But this isn't something I do until the very end of the. This isn't something I do until the very end of the process. So I will get a regular base like this, tons of spares. I will pop the model on it during painting, and I mean I can play with it as well while I'm in the middle of painting it, because it's a model on a base. It's fine to use, it's just not painted yet. And then once I get the whole thing finished, just before varnishing, because it's metal miniatures or plastic miniatures, snap them off of the standby base, carefully put them on this, finish the basing, varnish, and then in this instance, after varnishing, you put in the acrylic. And it means you can do the bases separately, you can do like interesting and complicated stuff. It's the process that I have found works best, especially if you're using an airbrush, because an airbrush is a very powerful tool, but you will do things like overspray. It just gives you some constraints, but just find a workflow that works best for you. Okay. And we're talking about grammar now. This is entirely my fault. So pet peeves. My general take on language is that if you have communicated to the point where someone can understand you, you have communicated correctly. Language is allowed to be mutable. That's mute, M-U-T-E, mutable. But there are some words that we don't have a better word for, and those I feel need to be preserved. And so moot is one of them, a moot point. More probably significant are words like nonplussed. And so nonplussed has a formal and a quote-unquote informal meaning. Informal in this case is a wrong meaning. You'll see people sometimes use nonplussed to mean unimpressed. And I don't blame someone who does that, because they've not heard the word before and they're trying to figure out from first principles what it means. And nonplussed sounds like it means not plussed. What does plussed mean? I don't know. Does plussed mean good? Well, it's not 1984, and we're not speaking in doublespeak, but it's the best guess that you've got. And so, informally, the word nonplussed has entered the lexicon as meaning unimpressed. Rob was nonplussed at their use of the word nonplussed. But in fact, what nonplussed means is at a loss for words, or rendered speechless. That comment was so stupid that I was left temporarily nonplussed. And we don't have another word that means nonplussed. So the informal definition of nonplussed frustrates me, because it leaves us without, if that becomes most common, it leaves us without a word to mean at a loss for words. Speechless kind of works. You can say I was left speechless. I was rendered temporarily mute. But nonplussed is the word that captures that. The corollary of that position, of course, is that inventing words for which we already have words is stupid, which is why mogged is a stupid word, because we already have the word upstaged, and we don't need another word to mean that. I wish I didn't understand what the youths were saying, but tragically, occasionally I must. Anyway, that's my philosophy of language. Ultimately, if the person you are talking to understood you, then you have communicated successfully. So even if I'm willing to temporarily correct someone on moot versus mute, if you communicated correctly, you did just fine. We're putting together a more mayor now, by the way. This is a... I think this is probably surplus stock. There's just a little bit of oxidization on it, but it's just a little bit, because this is a relatively recent sculpt. You can be overwhelmed, can you be underwhelmed, but can you be whelmed? Yes, actually, I think that is a word, but it's Old English. It's not in common usage. If you Google whelmed, you'll find you can actually Google the word. You'll find some dialogue around what the word means. Okay, this is a nice sculpt. I love Mormaus. Like the rules are finally in N5 good, but they the model is just like really solid, nicely posed, good detail. And it's a classic sculpt as well. It's the one where they modernized it to release the HMG, and the modernization did good work. Here's a little tip as well. I have snipped off the connection points here, so this will just be glued straight on. If you're doing that and you're filing things down, file both of the feet at the same time along a straight file, because that gets you a flush surface where both feet connect with the base on the same plane. Just little things that you learn in how many years? How old am I now? 2 decades of doing this? Alright. So we do need to file down a mold line there, along the very top of the rucksack where it's extremely visible. The rest are basically okay. Bit of raking light, please. Any glaring mold lines? Not that can't be forgiven for just armor. Any spare flash? Yes, a little bit of flash on that I missed. And we'll use a circular file to get that one down. Didn't bump the camera there? No, good. That's a bastard. This is right next to a rivet. I'll have to do. Okie doke. Just going to use a file in this case to get us some fresh metal for the contact point. These ones have got protruding nubbins, so we can wire brush them. Now this is going to be the dreaded triple contact point. And if I'm very lucky, this being a modern sculpt, I'll be able to just slot in the arm and it will connect cleanly across the body. How do we look there? Can I... No, this is going to be a 2 point... yeah, this is going to be a... This is going to be a painful jobby. Oh dear. Cool. So I need to make sure that this ammunition belt connects into that feed there. You bastards. Why did it have to be cut that way? Okay. Microflame says, loves combined army models, but the faction isn't for him. Yeah, you've been doing testing on that. You have certain styles of play, and it's not your bet. But kudos for trying it out. Okay. What has your meta been playing, or funny lists that have been around your playgroup? So right now we're actually all in a state of preparing for an event. So not a tremendous amount of meme list being played right now. It's all people being like, all right, cool, Border Bash is coming up. It focuses, like the prospect of hanging, it focuses the mind wonderfully. So we're all thinking about the same 5 scenario sets and how we might approach them. Even those of us who aren't going, I'm by no means confirmed yet. I changed jobs recently. Actually gives me a slightly better chance of being able to make it to an event happening around end of financial year, but not a certainty. So I'd like to go, but I need to just make sure that the ship is righted at work. Oh, bastard, come on. I am trying, sorry, very hard to make an ammunition belt line up, or it enormously want to line up. I think it's got to be that. I think that's as good as we're going to get. Yep, cool. There's a hand there as well. I did it correctly. Okay. um, and so Microflames in my local meta. He says lots of Panoceania, JSA, Ariadna, Tohar in Denial. That's Ed. And then whatever Rob is playing at the time. I'm pretty heavy on Combined Army right now. So if Corvus Belli said go ham and make us a sectoral, what would you make? My first answer to that would be a mercenary company, and it would be an Ariadna, probably an Ariadna Hack-Islam mercenary company, I think. Because there's a bunch of really cool stuff in Ariadna and a bunch of cool stuff in Hack-Islam, and we don't have a faction that necessarily bridges those two yet. Ariadna Yuching I don't think would make sense. Ariadna Panno would be too weird. So yeah, an Ariadna Hack-Islam. God knows what the company would be called, but that would be what I would go to in the first instance. Justice Dragon in Search Jokes on Krug. I'm assuming that's Krug 7-round event. Yeah, Krug's going to be like they're aiming for 150 players, right? Like, looking to be massive this year. Like it's the premier event, and kudos to them for organizing it. So 7 rounds. What's Interplanetaria usually? Is it 7 or 6? Okay, let's get you onto your base, big man. And there's a Mormaya done. I don't know how everyone else does this, but my usual rule of thumb is that I always like the direction the gun is pointing to be the forward arc, or the direction the model is looking, and failing that direction the gun is pointing. We had a local player ages back who would just completely randomly front arc his models. And so you'd have like this Cataran looking in that direction, but the base would be pointing in that direction. And he'd say, oh no, it's pointing in the direction the base is pointing in because that's what's legal. And it would just drive me absolutely mad. All right. This appears to be Isabel McGregor. These appear to be bits for something. Good God. Why is this packaged this way? This is an SAS, and that's all one piece, so we can do that. And by process of elimination, whatever remains will be the bits for the Galwegians. Yeah, Ariadna Hackmer Company, Justice Dragon says, would be awesome. Yeah, that would, I don't know what exactly you'd put into it, because it would be, like, the stupid dream is you have access to both Wallace and Saladin, and Hack-Islam and Ariadna irregulars. So you've got like Mutawiya and Mutawiya and Galwegians. But then you have you quickly run into the Dashat problem, where it's like, what is the rest of what do you spend all the points on once you've taken 14 irregular models and an inspiring leadership lieutenant? So, but like, oh man, Vistrals in an Ariadna list. Like, oh god, I could do that. Or like anything with access to Vistra. I love me some Vistrals. Tank Hunters. So maybe we would tune back. Maybe we would tune back some of the strongest irregular stuff. Like maybe we don't give access to Metalia, for example. Maybe we don't give access to Galwegians. By strongest, I mean cost effective. But instead, we have Tank Hunters. So we have a little bit of attack stuff. We don't make the Vistrals linkable. But we'll have some Ariadne irregulars and some Hack-Islam irregulars, and Wallace and Saladin. Although they don't really make sense in a mercenary company, so it would have to be some sort of like special cooperative task force or something. And then gotta have the vehicles, both Hack-Islam vehicles, because it's completely fucking busted. Oh yeah, you could actually justify. You could have like Ariadne tags. Maybe we just do an Ariadne-based mercenary company that's then like illegally accessing technology from other factions. That could be cool as well. This is the old SAS model, by the by, and his feet are very dinky, and he's also small. It's not completely unmanageable, but like if we put him next to this tank hunter, this tank hunter is a feminine model. She's a little bit under scale. If you put a male tank hunter, it would be larger. And this SAS has not eaten his veggies, but that's okay. All right. So this is an SAS with assault pistol, chain rifle, and knife, I guess. Man, SAS, there's a profile which is totally fine in N5, but how the mighty have fallen relative to N4 especially. Back when decharges didn't have a penalty to be used in close combat. I wonder if you could add a rule to a model that's like demolitions expert or something, where it just removes the penalty for using decharges as a close combat weapon. Probably the most superfluous rule that would ever have been added to the game. But I have such fond memories. I had a game once where an SAS snuck up behind a Raicho and slapped a decharge to it and killed it in one shot. And it was the most like perfect narrative moment. Like ideal, no notes, completely SAS moment, completely Ariadnan moment. It's like in Trench Crusade, how New Antioch is based on the idea that there is a finite and countable number of satchel charges needed to kill Satan. And you can't really do that anymore because the penalty to use decharges in CC means you need to isolate or immobilize something, which, yes, makes sense. That's probably how it should work. But tell me that, like, explosive foo wouldn't be a perfectly reasonable skill to give a very select number of models. Okay, where the heck does your chain rifle go? I assume it connects under there. Yeah, this is an old sculpt. You do not see connection points often anymore that are just this rounded. Just rubbing my eyes. That have these like rounded. I have to just sort of figure out how this slots in. It's fine. It just slots in like that. But all right. First things first. Let's get the chain rifle in place. Yeah, cool. So that goes in relatively easily. So if I was creating a sectoral, would I make it a gimmick army? No, not really. If we were doing something from scratch, and it's like, okay, we need something that fits into the Infinity lore and aesthetic, I can tell you right now that it would not be a 16th Pan-Oceanian sectoral. You know what? Decharges +6, Big Cat Piranha. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's how you do it. You just add that rule. You just give it to him as a weapon. Yeah, we should just give that to SAS. Decharges +6. So the actual dream sectoral, if I was making one, would be the Carnate. For those who are not familiar, the Carnate is the biker gangs, the tribes folk. So it's like Dalami and the Nazarova twins, etc. Those are all, and previously Kazim Beg and then Kazim Beg. I would make a Carnate sectoral, and so we would have lots of bikers. We would have linkable bikers. We would have Kazim Beg would return. That model, I have that model sitting, actually not completely painted, on the bottom shelf of a display cabinet a couple of meters from me. A couple of meters, he says, like a meter and a bit. The room is not that large. And so Kazim Beg would be an inspiring leadership lieutenant. We'd give the Nazarova twins chain of command. No cost increase, just free. Chain of command non-specialist, I think, on both Nazarova twins, because you can give that to a model without it really increasing the cost at all. So Nazarova twins get chain of command non-specialist. Kazim Beg comes back as an inspiring leadership. 2 wound, no wounding cap, etc. Give inspiring leadership to both the Nazarova twins as well, so that if they become the lieutenant, you retain that. And you have, what you do then is you'd be able to have like three different leadership options of the of the Coom gang, all of them having inspiring leadership and 2 chains of command. Maybe give a lieutenant profile to the twins as well, same deal. So you've got these remarkably vulnerable, like you have to just suicide forward these lieutenants to get worth out of them. You have to use Kazimberg aggressively. SAS done. But you've got multiple chain of command redundancy, and you've got, like, it's so hard to defend all of this stuff because you're looking at like this army has like 8 large bases in it, so good luck deploying. We'd put vehicles, we'd probably put both vehicles, but what we'd do is we'd have like rundown profiles. So you'd have a like a Karnat Hatham and a Karnat Zabak, and what that would be that they would be like badly maintained or like bunged up or secondhand. You'd have a Karnat Magariba, and these would be like off-brand, aftermarket, modified, but also like rundown. So you'd have like an Armor 7 Magariba Guard, for example. It doesn't have a 360 visor. And I calculate that model would cost approximately 50 points. Or something, right? So you have all of these huge bases. You can't really defend terrain is, you're going to have exposed stuff. Stuff's going to get shot going second. But all of these things are like aggressive and dangerous. And so you have defense through redundancy, where like your Magariba costs 50 something points. As much as like whatever the cheapest nomad tag is, whatever a lizard costs these days, you could do something like that, but like even a little bit cheaper because it is on a Silhouette 8 base. And so you just have this like resiliency through redundancy where your opponent gets to pick stuff to kill. You can't defend everything. They are going to shoot down one of your flyers before it activates. They're going to shoot down some of your bikers. But you have 3 layers of inspiring leadership lieutenant. You have linked bikers. You have probably no eclipse, I think. We'd have lots of smoke, but very carefully control access to anything like disco balls, for example, because what you don't want is to have that army have total visibility control. There have to be checks and balances on how quickly it can move forward. God, I really want to play this now. That would be awesome. You could probably add Yarn Yarns or Bashi Bazooks or both. What else would you bring into the Karnat? What would be the new stuff? Because you could design the entire thing easily as a low impost, by just having like Karnat Zabek, Karnat Hatham, Karnat unique profiles for the twins, and you'd make Mr. Beg, he'd be unique. You just bring that model back. What new profiles might we bring out? Because we've got all of the Coom Riders already. Monstruckers would absolutely be present in the army. That's 100%. Although they're kind of the enemy of the Karnate in many cases, but whatever. What else? What else would we go in there? We'd have to have other. Actually. Oh, okay. All right. So we've had vehicle rules and descriptions for vehicles. So far, all vehicles so far have been flyers. However, there is no reason why you can't have a vehicle that's not a ground-based vehicle. Nothing in the rules prohibits that. It's just a designator. Because aerial and vehicle as a category are different. So we can have a non-aerial vehicle, and we have it be like an open back truck with like a bunch of like Delami tribes people in it or something, like a technical, like a few, not an actual technical, because I don't think a Toyota Hilux should exist in 200 years in the future exactly as, although it could. That would be the most hilarious thing possible. But let's not go like too ridiculous. But you could do a like futuristic Infinity style technical, which is like an obviously civilian vehicle, but converted for desert combat. And then the other thing that like I have wanted in Infinity but would be difficult to balance are a kind of like drone operator unit. And I think in terms of the narrative of Infinity as a future battlefield, you can make a pretty good argument why, like, no, we don't need drone operators. Did I get 2 sets of Isabella here? Yes, I have two hairs for Isabella. Someone somewhere is missing one then. Um, but the idea basically of a drone operator would be, and you can just say like quantronic warfare makes them way too easy to jam, and it's completely impractical to do cable running. And also, please God, let's not invoke the horrors of the Ukraine war and the people that are actually suffering and dying there in this game. Let's not be too on the nose. But setting that aside, it's a very reasonable concern. Um, a like a desert tribesman that has just like a collection of interference remotes that are they're just like silhouette 3 with flash pulse. Silhouette 2 representing a little flying drone with a flash pulse, and you have a pilot or an operator who is controlling like three 1 point, like imagine a Pupnik had a flash pulse, three 1 point flash pulse remotes that are synchronized with them, just a defensive tool. And so you have the three like drone remotes that you deploy in zone of control, and you could theoretically do an activation. So it would be like a 16, 17 point profile where the actual operator is relatively cheap and they have a bunch of peripheral drones and the drones just have flash pulses. And maybe you can take a version that also has Panzerfaust, but I'm a bit concerned about that. I think just flash pulse remotes. And so it's basically, hey, regular trooper, or hell, irregular. It's basically a warcore plus plus plus, where you have a 3 point warcore kind of thing, except it's got multiple drones. That's a dream profile I've wanted to add for ages, and it would fit kind of well inside the Karna, and it's a defensive tool where you have to kill these bastards. Um, Kill the little drones before you can progress. Make them, non-lethal, but still represent a threat. Yeah, Carnot. God damn it. That was like a pet mental project of mine from ages back, and I'd forgotten about it until this conversation. But yeah, the using it's a little bit of real talk. If you step back and you just admire the horrible military efficiency of it, there is stuff that is used in like loitering munitions and drones and FEBs especially. If you don't think at all about the human cost, they are a fascinating piece of technology. But I don't think I want Infinity to be a game that really directly and immediately parallels those pieces of technology, because you can't do that without confronting very real modern horrors. And like the idea, if you stop and think for a moment about what the psychological pressure of a battlefield, a soldier fighting on a battlefield where loitering munitions are being deployed is like, that's too much. That's too real. That's too real, dude. We're not dealing with that. We're not talking about that. We're not. This game is as an escape from some of this stuff. And so I don't want to go all in on that. Okay, we got a mispack, I think, unless that's Isabella's. Please let that be Isabella's leg and butt pouch, I guess. What the hell am I looking at here? But yeah, so just a little bit of real talk there, where it's like you want to limit how much you are invoking modern occurrences. Just a little. You want to just do that with a little bit of like care and due sensitivity to the fact that shit's fucked, yo. Anyway. Ooh. Now, I was worried for a moment. Isabella has come in 2 packets. God, this is an old sculpt. You can tell because it's a million goddamn pieces for no reason. Oh, Carlos Belli, why you do this to me? I don't know how old Isabel McGregor's sculpt is, but I know that she's not modern because fucking hell. Is this like an ant? We've got a separate bum pair. How many pieces is this? Setting aside the free hair. This is the kind of model that justifies Maddie's dislike of assembly. There is an antenna widget that is a separate piece. I could lose this and no one would ever know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces for a metal miniature. Can we fucking not? I knew what I was signing up for, but my goodness. This is why Maddie hates assembly. Okay. Okay. Just how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You do this little bit by little bit. Oh my goodness. Okay. I think that goes like that. Give the glue a bit of tooth to hold on to. I think this has been cast recently as well. This is an old stock, but of course they just, they don't redo a new mold for her. 8 pieces. Infinite conversion potential, Camillo. Camillo, no. Okay, alright. Carefully, carefully. Line the groin up so that it looks reasonably naturalistic. It's not even a particularly good join. It's a bad join, in point of fact. There's a gap there. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. What the fuck do they expect me to do with this antenna widget? I think that goes in... Christ. This was designed by a psychopath. No, it wasn't. It was designed by someone 15 years ago, or 10 years ago. The technology has moved on. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Okay, let's get the... We're getting the little, like, antenna. I have to hold this close to me rather than close to the camera. We're getting a little antenna. Oh god. No. This is going to be difficult. So I can see where it's meant to go. The glue, I might be able to capillary action some glue in there. But I think I got glue on my fingers. Okay. My pain. Ah. Okay. So, a couple of things. Firstly, how have you been streaming 54 minutes and already have 4 models assembled? One of them's only kind of assembled. I, I, I don't like this. This is bad. This is a bad assembly piece. Second question: has anyone ever put deployable cover out and had it matter? No, never. I have never used deployable cover. I have never seen it matter. I've never seen either version of it matter. I should try and use it at some point. Like, it would be a cool thing to be like, oh yes, and this is the game where I used deployable cover and it was relevant. Okay, blue tack, save me. We're going to just build a blue tack scaffold to try and hold this stupid thing in place. Matty, I hope you appreciate the sacrifice that I am making for you here. This is going to break. And I got glue on my hands. I do like using super glue as a rule of thumb, but it's also gotten on my thumb as a... God damn it. This is a future problem. I'm not dealing with that right now. Let's get Isabel the rest of the way together. Can we put the hair on the back of her head? Yes, we can. That should be straightforward. Is deployable cover still ARM +6? So you pick a mode when you deploy it where it's either no penalty to enemy hit but gives +6 to armor, or it's just cover as normal. In Canberra, we will generally play with more than enough cover that you should find cover as you walk around the table. I can see, not to sledge our fine cousins overseas, but I can see maybe an Adepticon list getting some merit out of using a deployable cover piece here and there. The other thing that you can do with deployable cover is, the +6 armor version. And what you're specifically aiming for there is to have some kind of a model that just becomes, gross or broken when given that armor boost. And so some options include models that have limited cover as a rule. So I could see, for example, giving a Montesa Knight duo, which don't get a benefit from hiding behind cover normally, but putting them up to armor 10 would be disgusting. And then the other option is pieces which are already super heavies, where you do cap out. There is a maximum armor value. I think it's 10 or 12. The deployable cover rules tell you what the highest possible armor you can obtain as a result of deployable cover is. Someone would need to go and check that. But you can do something like you can put a Jotun behind +6 deployable cover and just say, I can almost never fail an armor roll even if you fire armor-piercing ammunition at me, because I have so much cushion under the bottom of this that there's just no way to reduce me below the game's maximum armor value. But my go-to, if I was trying to make it work, my go-to would be I would start with a Montesa Knight duo in fuck. There is no contact point here. I'm just trying to get her bag to connect to 2 different straps while I have glue on my hands. Does deployable cover deactivate at the end of turn? Nope, it's permanent once you place it. I can't remember the specifics around. There might be some rules around destruction. No, you fucking don't. There might be some rules around the destruction of deployable cover, but I don't remember what they are. So for practical purposes, yeah, it's once it's placed, it's permanent. There's also some weird jank that you can do with deployable cover where it's used to... You can vault on it once it's placed. So you can theoretically use deployable cover to reach a part of the table that you couldn't otherwise, but like that's such a niche use case. So yeah, if we were looking to make use of it, my starting point would be Montesa duos in Verona. This model is going to be the death of me. I am actually going to die. I'm going to die, and Maddie will have killed me. Please, bag, go back to where you were. No. No, 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 no. Oh, God. Whoever designed this is a psycho. So what I have confirmed is that this bag is meant to kind of like hang, like it's in motion off of her back, which means that it's got 2 tiny contact points. That are going to actually be the death of me. Okay. We're going to turn this upside down. We're just going to pop some glue in there. And we are not going to touch this model for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to put her gun and her other gun over there, because of course she's holding a rifle in one hand and a pistol in the other, and we're going to leave that at that. We're also not going to touch her stupid little antenna dealy. Okay. Free hair, I guess. That leaves us with, from this pack, about an hour left in the video, so we might be doing okay. We might get this done. We have 3 Galwegians and their weaponry. And their heads. Cool. Okie doke. Let's get them all snipped apart. Loving this deep strategic analysis interspersed with expletives of frustration. Yeah, N2 era models are just, they're built different. Literally, they're built in a way that is different. This is a very nice claymore that we are currently trimming the flash off, hoping that I'm not deleting pommel details as I go. So, let's get these 5-point irregulars, one of whom will probably be used to proxy Wallace because a model with a sword that large is impossible to believe is just a 5-point regular. Irregular, well, regular with Wallace. Okay, remove the flash. Trim the heads. These are N3 era models and so should go together at least a little bit better. Alright. Alright. This can be more relaxing. This can be the experience that I usually want when I'm doing model assembly. The problem is that the more difficult ones we've done so far have resulted in me getting super glue over my hands, which is an inevitable part of this process, but it reduces my sensitivity and dexterity, which increases the likelihood of getting super glue on my hands. it's just whatever I'd call it a slippery slope, but technically speaking, it's the opposite of that. Slippery is probably the least accurate word used to describe the downward spiral. Matt Bissell says about a bronze with deployable cover. Well, then you're taking a bronze. So that's like problem number one. Bronzes don't natively have deployable cover, do they? Let's just jump into Army on the phone really, really quickly. If I just pull open O12, we'll just look at the generic sectoral, and we go equipment, deployable cover. So it's just on the lambda. So you'd have to take a lambda, and then are bronzes in? Surely bronzes are in generic. No, they're not. Okay. Good for generic players. So Starmada. Let's filter by equipment, deployable cover. Yeah, so it's just lambda units. It's interesting. Like you could put deployable cover for free on a weird number of units and have it be like totally okay and interesting. Where if you gave bronzes themselves deployable cover as an example, would it make bronzes good? No, but it would make them more interesting. And an interesting profile is as useful to game experience as a good profile. Not every profile should be good, but ideally every profile is interesting. And deployable cover is one of those tools where it's like, it probably doesn't do anything most games. But sometimes it might, and as long as you don't make it cost anything, as long as we don't increase the cost of bronzes further, then having them be able to like yeet into a position, slap down some deployable cover, be immunity behind armor 6, and make it your opponent's problem, that would be pretty cool. That would be an interesting little piece of like, this is probably not competitively optimal, but it's also interesting. Can you make this work? Can you be the player that figures out what is the list build where this pops off? What is the edge case where scenario and table and etc. combines to make this actually a good thing? Profiles like that are awesome. So although we've kind of strayed a little bit from, is it good if you take deployable cover on a lambda and then you use that deployable cover to give the bronze in the midfield cover? No, that's not. That's too many different steps. You don't want to be moving your engineer into the midfield into a position where that deployable cover might be really material. Like, we're too many steps down the underpants gnome plan. But if they ever give a profile like a bronze deployable cover, that would be really cool. That would be really interesting. Okay, doc. Once again, we have a sleeve that has a sprue point on it we have to be careful with. But these... No, we're going to have a 3-point connection there as well. It'll be manageable. Okay, we'll do the heads last. Now, who gets what? Does this box have a picture on the back? It does. Okay. So, give me my reference picture. You with the thing, you have the gun. The gun goes on like that. And it's actually quite a good connection point. So you've got the long arm. So the long arm then connects Like, yep, that, yeah, super glue on the hands. But okay, cool. That means that this goes there. Alrighty. Super glue on the thumbs. Let's get this guy done. Wire brush. Give us our connection point, please. While we're doing it, we'll do where the head goes. Wire brush. Man, I'm actually kind of buzzing about that idea of the carnate sectoral. Corvus belly, make it happen. Bring me on board. You won't regret it. You will regret it. Alright, zipper T. Okay. Slow and steady, except that I'm really only going to be streaming for perhaps another hour and a bit, so... because sooner or later I will need to go and have some lunch. Now, that's a really nice connection. The gun is just across the body. It slots into place really well. It's not doing anything fancy. Let's give it half of a second to set up and then ruin it by trying to put the arm in. Okay, we do this carefully. We have deep breaths. We get glue on our... God, there's goddamn flash on the arm that I didn't catch. Alright. Where did you go, circular file? There, fell into that gap. If we don't do this now, it'll be a pain to do it later. Okay. Do I want to try picking this up like that? Yeah, maybe. It doesn't look right. I think it's the other arm. I think it's... Is that? No. I think it might actually be this arm that's meant to go in there. Notwithstanding how they were laid out on the sprues. Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, it is. Good. Okay. Didn't screw that up. However, we now need to make the wrist join. God. Come on. Come on. I don't want to force this into place. Please, Carlos Belli. Please. Please just fit. You know what? Near enough. No one will ever know. It's not perfect. It's pretty good. Okay. Okay. Dab of glue just to secure that in place. And we'll pop the head on. What head? What head is that? That is the ponytail head. So now we play Find the Ponytail on these guys. There's the ponytail. And so this should now just... I'll clean some flash off of that connection there. This should just slot on there. And we'll have a Galwegian done. Does that want to go? You gonna screw with me? No? I think we're good. Oh, okay. Do you think there could be a way in modern N5 for the old swarm armies to be implemented? Yes, absolutely. You just change how many troops they can take. So, and you know, Kestrel can have a 20 order list, etc. There already exists a tool in the game to cheat the trooper count. It's called Comlink, and it was originally introduced as part of the reinforcement system. And there are profiles in every single army already that are Comlink, Comlink +1, Comlink +2, etc. You could just make a change to the core rules that says that any model with Comlink, you'd have to trim down who has access to what Comlinks, but you could just implement that. That rule literally already exists. And you can use it to control, like, okay, you know, we'd like White Banner Army to maybe have access to 16 troops, but not any more than that. So the Xanthi with Comlink +1 goes in, But then you have some factions with comlink +2. You could even theoretically do like US Ariadne with comlink +3, but I wouldn't be inclined to. I think once you get above the golden amount is probably, for some factions it's 16 troopers, for some factions it's 17, but 17 would be very rare. And there's an impost to taking it because those troopers have a points cost, and also they use up a troop slot themselves. So like by definition, a comlink +1 trooper is just kind of making itself free. But you could absolutely expand how comlink is used. I don't know if it's necessary. 15 is, for most armies, a pretty good number. And for armies that would be nice to see above that, you'd only really want like 16, it may be 17. Like some having like a Mormaer Lieutenant Comlink +2, for example, which would give you access to 17 troopers, because the Mormaer isn't he's a troop that you'll be taking already in the list because he's a Mormaer. That's the way of saying like, yeah, okay, cool. So you can take Wallace and have inspiring leadership, or you can take a Mormaer Lieutenant and have the Horde, but like not more than 17 troops. And that could work. That could be a thing that like functions pretty okay, I think. But then you'd have the question of how do we make, like, we built that mechanic for reinforcements. Do we change how reinforcements work? Do we delete them from the game entirely and accept that it was a mistake that didn't quite function? Reinforcements is not an unsalvageable mechanic. It just had problems with, not actually problems with design, problems with the play experience that design produced, which is a way of saying problems with the design. The issue that I ran into with reinforcements was that every reinforcements game played out the same way. After the first game, there was zero novelty in it. And that's the absolute opposite of what you want in a game mechanic, my goodness. And I think they recognize that, which is why they sort of like quietly incorporated those models into armies as takeable pieces. And we just don't see reinforcements as a thing in N5. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you salvage reinforcements as a mechanic, because the core conceit of troops that arrive during the game, you either have to so the problem that they ran into was that they very heavily restricted how reinforcements could arrive because they didn't want it to be imbalanced. Fair. However, by very heavily restricting how reinforcements could arrive, they very heavily restricted the play experience that could occur as a result, which meant that every reinforcement game after the first one felt the same. Once players figured out, like, oh yeah, this is how this mechanic works, cool. And so the nominal solution is that you have to kind of unrestrict how reinforcements can arrive. But then you're like, well, how do we curate this experience? How do we make this balanced? How do we fit this into scenarios? Because they've said, like, they introduced that like suitable for reinforcements label in ITS 17, but that is not the same as, please run a reinforcements event, etc. So yeah, I think the design approach, like if I was being given the mandate of like, hey, reintroduce reinforcement to the game, make it work, I probably start by just going hog wild and seeing how far we can let the mechanic go a bit nuts before it breaks, and like really heavily playtest it. But even then, the best case is that you find the broken stuff and it's broken and you can't let that into the game. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly how you fix reinforcements. You maybe really ease up on the arrival mechanic, because the drop pod arrival, where they just appear in the midfield and start winning the mission or not, as the case may be. If you have reinforcement profiles that are just like, you can take this reinforcement fusilier, and he costs 6 points, and he's just a fusilier. And if at any point you have fewer than your original starting strength, you can choose to spend his order off field to arrive, and he walks onto the table like a parachutist in your deployment zone only, and then you have him in subsequent turns. So you get this mechanic that like cushions your order pool, but even that doesn't particularly work. There was some, yeah, I can't see that being appealing. They probably did test that, to be honest. Um, there was some thinking that I did actually about what I wanted Tactical Window to look like in editions, like particularly as we moved into N4, and it was pretty obvious that Tactical Window was going to be a thing that would stick around. I remember thinking about what I might want subsequent editions of that mechanic to look like, and how you could use that as a basis for things like in soft caps to order counts and pools and stuff. And I remember going into N4 thinking, I don't really want Tactical Window in the game. That's the 15 trooper limit, the hard 15 trooper limit. These days in N5, I have grown accustomed to it. It's fine. It's one more resource you have to manage. I don't hate that. But I remember going into N4 being like, what I want is not a limit on how many troopers are in the game, but a limit on how many orders you can generate, where you impose a cap on, like, you can have as many troopers in a list as you want, but you can only generate 15 regular, irregular, or tactical awareness orders. And the reason why that was interesting is that like something, you test the rule, you figure out what works. But the idea was that you could tell, like, players had flexibility in list construction. Players could take 15 or 16 or 17 or 20 or 25 troops if they could afford them, but they'd only ever have so many orders. And so taking a 16th troop as a Fusilier in Pano, for example, is something that you might consider, because then you could lose a model and still have your 15 orders. And in a faction that had lots of cheap stuff, you might take them because of the points to wounds ratio, for example. But that there would be, like, you would be pretty heavily incentivized against running like 20 troopers or 21 troopers, because after a certain point, they're just diminishing returns. They're sitting in your deployment zone doing nothing. But we didn't get that. We got Tactical Window instead. And I understand from my perspective there is not anything to do with the aesthetic of the game. My perspective there is the play experience. But it is very worth noting that the aesthetic of the game is tactical, special operations, elite forces of Galwegians with swords. Let's not investigate that too heavily. And so you have, after a certain point, you have the developers just wanting to curate the aesthetic of the play experience. And above a certain count, frankly, I honestly expect the combat group mechanic. When they first wrote the combat group mechanic, I would bet $1 that whoever first wrote the combat group mechanic kind of thought that what they were doing was soft limiting armies to 10 troopers, because who would take a second combat group? I bet back in whenever that was first conceived, I bet that they thought that the average troop count would be 10. And then it quickly turned out that that is not the case. And so Tactical Window is the, like, no, stop it. You are not taking more than, we'll give you this extra combat group of 5 troopers because you'll complain if we don't. But Tactical Window is the developers saying, look, sorry, there's no way for us to balance this in a way where you organically take the number of troops that we think you should, which is 10. So have 15, and that's the rule. You cannot have more. The Wuju Sale says, I have no idea why Tactical Window isn't. You can only generate 15 regular orders. And then word strategy also doesn't count. Yeah, it's because of the aesthetic. It's because they don't want a situation where players find the loophole and take the Caledonian goon swarm and figure out a way to make it work. And it is at odds with the aesthetic they are trying to convey with the game. Notwithstanding that the aesthetic they are trying to convey with the game. Oh god, pray for Rob. I have to get this arm into this sword. The aesthetic that they're trying to convey with the game is sort of... I don't think it... I wouldn't say fundamentally undermined, but I am assembling a Caledonian with a fucking greatsword right now. As is... Oh no, the curse has occurred. My hand is stuck to the arm. And like how this fits into... This finger here is stuck to the model, and I have to try and get it off without breaking the bond. The problem is, I did it. The problem is that super glue bonds much more easily to skin than to metal, because super glue is fucking suture. It's designed to be an emergency military suture, and we just accidentally figured out that it's really good at gluing other stuff together. That's why you will always glue something to your skin more quickly than you will glue it to metal. We did it! Why is there... What is this doing in here? Is this for the Cataran? Catarans don't have Sapper. Did they just kind of imagine that the Cataran... yeah, it's a Cataran. It's the Catarans are not S3 guys, but you've given me a Cataran base. Cool. Let me just put... I can't believe it's not Wallace's head on. Can't believe we got that assembled. Okie doke. We haven't finished Isabel yet. I'm going to have to get a base out of my collection and give it to Matty, so he's going to be a bit confused as to why there's one slightly different base in here. Well, he can be confused, that's fine. Come on. As I'm not breaking that Cameronian off the base. Currently looking at my precious stockpile of bases that don't have arc markers on them. They don't make those anymore. We do not have any. Do we have any down here? We might, actually. You'll do. Nobody asked questions about why this space has been undercoded already. You can just have the free Silhouette 3 as well. Okie doke. Ah. The ponytail. That head is Connor McLeod. The ponytail one is Ramirez. Rob, have you encountered tweezers? Yes, I do not. I do not find them beneficial because it would be like learning to use chopsticks. I don't have. I've tried using them in the past, but it's just a dexterity issue where making them work and getting, because you have to like exert a little bit of force, but not too much. And so I'm just going to acetone my hands after this, and that's the price that I'll pay. All right. Cool. So let's get Isabel McGregor's guns on. That is an extremely angry pangolin. Yes, that is my Visceral proxy. I have two of them. They are done. One has the gun on the left, one has the gun on the right. I took those to CanCon. Rob, can you use chopsticks? Yes, and I did learn to do so. And theoretically, I could learn to use tweezers for model assembly. The thing is I would use tweezers for model assembly so rarely that I would not have that learning curve. Yeah, Wuju Sal says, yeah, you already got your super cool, tactical Black Ops fights can already have biker gangs and knight sword fighting werewolves. Yeah, so just lean in. Like, just, you've established that Infinity is a Black Operations game, but just be like, it's fine. You just expand the scope and say, but also your Black Operations game can include a caravan raid crossing the Borak Desert or a Tesium resource clan feud in Ariadne and Highlands. Like, just be chill. Fuck. Come on. Okay. But yes, to answer the question, I can use chopsticks. Probably not. I am the least proficient person with chopsticks in my household. but that is not the same as not being proficient. I can use them reasonably well. And there are some foods for which chopsticks are just the superior piece of cutlery. Okay. We've got Isabel's arms on. We are not going to goddamn touch her again for fear that she will break after the glue is set. Use chopsticks instead of tweezers. No, again, my hands are more dexterous my fingers are more dexterous than chopsticks. I would need to get very, very thin ones, and I'm not good enough with chopsticks to do that. I do appreciate the solutioning, but we just make our peace here. How the actual fuck do I get this? Sorry, language. Do I get this stupid antenna? I think what we do is we kind of narrow this down into a stabbing point and we wedge it in there. We're going off reservation a little bit with this, but there's a tiny, tiny hole that we have to kind of like wedge this in. And so I'll just try some glue and get this in there and just hold it in place for... It's just not going to hold, but whatever. Oh, I want the Caledonian Goon Squad, don't we all? So, is that going to... Carefully. Maddie's going to lose that. He's going to bump it, and it doesn't matter. It's fine. Okay, cool. That's one box done. I don't know if we'll have time for all of these, but we do have more to get through. So, let's take a look at... Repack Force Alpha. Let's get this open. Someone is messaging me memes. We'll read that later. Knife. Somehow missed the box. What have we got in this one? We've got Highlander Greys, another Mormaer, some Volunteers, Caden Dawn. These should all be slightly more modern. So I think I've done myself the most difficult ones first. I think. So maybe we can live a dream and blast through these in like an hour. And then I'll go have lunch. So, easy stuff first. This will be the second Metal McMurrough that I have assembled. We can get all of his stuff done relatively quickly. And then take it from there. Okay. Let's do McMurrough because he's a big lad. As noted, my recommendation actually to Matty is going to be that this becomes the second Cameronian, and that he goes and buys the new McMurrough sculpt. Firstly, because the new McMurrough sculpt is very nice, and secondly, because you want 3 dogs for plenty of Cameronian lists. There's tales from the Virginia meta in the United States, where one of my regular contacts for Ariadne info comes from, is that they've had someone pick up Caledonia over there, and people are learning that if you don't post some AROs, you're going to have 3 dogs up the gooch in very short order, just bounding toward you. One of the interesting things, I wasn't sure if we talk about how Cameronia plays, but there's this interesting thing with Cameronia where they look like they're a close combat faction, and they're kind of actually not. There are a small selection of models in the Caledonian Highlander army that are good if you get them into close combat, but even the best of them, like Wallace and McMurrough, are not the best close combatants in the game. Cameronians are actually a really good example of a model that you don't want to use to punch something with a sword, except in fairly extreme circumstances. A Cameronian you want to use to get close, throw some grenades, maybe throw some chain rifles, but actually like spec fire almost as much as anything else. And it's goddamn terrifying having people spec fire you in your deployment zone on 13s because they impetuous forward, moved forward, and then are just about in range already. But yeah, that's actually one of the most lethal use cases. of a Cameronian, nothing to do with the sword. They're CC23, Natural Born Warrior, which is fine. It's fine. That's fine. I'm not leaping for joy at the prospect of getting into close combat with that. That's just fine. A little bit of bendy sword action, but let's get you together, McMurray. Okay. That all looks in fairly good nick. There's a little bit of a mold line there. Doggo himself seems fine. Ping that off. Does he stand okay? He does. Good. Just line that up a little. The biggest pain from memory is the join between the hollow back section and that, because it's metal. It's not perfectly flush. There's like one key point that's there's two key points that are very optimistic, that are meant to like guide you in, but they don't line up. That's right, they don't. So you kind of have to just force it. I don't hate, that's not too bad. Okay. We are going to clean that, because if we don't, it's just not going to hold, because there's not enough connection point. Get that done. Get that done. We'll clean the other stuff here and now as well, so we can all do it in kind of short order, although I want to give him some bond time before I handle the miniature. Okay. Alright, McMurray, let's get your back on. This is also, because there's such little contact, this is one of those ones that's fraught for losing fingertips. Oh, we got it. We got it in. Is it in yet? Cool. Can we do a sword or something at the same time? Yes, we can. I think we can hold this with two hands. Bloop. Bloop. Okay, cool. He's going together. Oh, alrighty. How is everyone doing, by the way? How are we enjoying the stream? What's people playing at the moment? It's evening. I think it's getting a little bit late in the States if you're on the East Coast. I know there's a small number of Australians in the audience that will probably, in relatively short order, be going and getting themselves some lunch, as I will be doing the same. Okay, let's get his other arm in. This one shouldn't be too difficult because it's across the chest. I just have to hold it in a way where I don't disrupt any of the other bonds I'm currently trying to set, like that. I put pressure on his hilt. So, that's on me. Oh. Yeah, okay. We stuffed that up. That was why you don't rush these. Let's get his gun arm in. There's only so many metal points of contact there as well, which is part of the issue. This is like, it's a big flush piece, but it's not truly flush. You bastard. Try that again. And yeah, there's some glue on the hands. I'm actually not convinced that that is going together exactly the way I want it to, but it's not quite fitting into the recess across his chest. And I've just got a ton of glue on my other hand because of the glue that is there. Frontline says, been painting all day and needs a break. Seaspos just finished their first yarn for Oban. Awesome. Frontline, what have you been painting? And Seaspo, you are going to come out and have a game at some point soon, yes? Ah. Chazsaw says, in New Zealand, so obviously only just woke up at 2 o'clock. Oof. Yeah, because you're hours ahead of us. Yeah, you're 2 hours ahead. Played military orders for the first time this week. Ran 4 nights Hospitaller and lost awful. Hospitaller nights are playable. Military orders is an interesting spot. I would describe them broadly as being pretty solid these days, but they're not solid in a way that is like easy to play the first time you pick them up. So yeah, I can see why there might be some like what the good stuff is. Now, how do we put this? Military orders is in a position. I actually really like what they did with military orders. Where what they did with military orders was they kept all the limitations of the faction intact. It's not a faction that just got buffed to the gills, but some of the strong stuff is really good. So as much as you will have people complain about how military orders is a hacking faction now, and it's not a completely unreasonable complaint. That's like, why is Pano doing hacking? Shut up. That's why. There's still a faction where you look at the bottom end and go, I've got to make something happen with like one flash pulse bot and croziers and etc. So it's a faction with a learning curve, 100%. I would not say 4 Hospitalers is an auto lose army, but I would say definitely tricky. The only knights you had left with longest weapons were frenzied and couldn't beat a linked Hayate in a gunfight at the end of the game. Yeah, that makes sense. The frenzy on Hospitalers is meaningful. That's not something you get away from anymore. Frontline says they just finished their Sujan and new Beast Hunter. Which Beast Hunter Frontline? Is that the JSA? Or it's like the Pokemon Master Katana Beast Hunter? Or because there's a few of those sculpts these days. They're basically all ballers. They're all really good. But yeah, I've had some games against military orders. I don't yet have a strong opinion about what I think the structural foundation of like a list needs to be, because you can access disco, and that's probably really good in military orders, but you don't access it trivially. It's sort of like it's gated behind Konstantinos, but he's fine, but he's not cheap. And I look at meta lists like tournament lists that have performed, and they don't click in my head just yet. So military orders remain a little bit of a mystery to me. Other than that, I had one game where I tried to hack Deferson just to see how bad it would be, and it was pretty bad. He's not an easy man to put a Trinity on, even if you have ostensibly a very good hacker. I went after him with a Tuareg, knowing mathematically it was probably a bad call. And it was. It was like, yep, cool, okay. Thought that might not go well, but needed to just see. You can run that through a calculator and be like, this seems like it's going to be a bit of an issue. But it was a game against a new player, and I was happy to just futz around and see what would work and what wouldn't. And like, let's try this. If it goes well, I'll have learned something. If it goes badly, I'll have learned something. And it'll make for an interesting game for someone who's sort of like looking at getting back into the game a little bit. He's an Age of Sigmar refugee, and he's a very solid player. He'll be very good once he gets his like head back around Infinity. But I treated it just a little bit like a demo game. Man, Age of Sigmar, my goodness. People have heard the rumors about that being end times a second time, I assume. That's a bloody, just hilarious state of affairs. Frontline says today they finished the new one that just released. Love both of the Beast Hunter models equally, so just switch back and forth running them. Yep. Very cool. Alrighty. Caden Don should be a much easier assembly because he is a modern miniature. He is not Isabel McGregor. And so he's got these nice, big, clean, angular affixation points that don't make me hate myself. Chazsaw says tried to Trinity a Tinbot Dockerby with Deferson. He's good but not magical. Yeah. So what makes Deferson a really good hacker is, firstly, he's a do-everything hacker, which is fantastic. The second thing is that he's very hard to hack himself. That's what's really useful, is that he can go offensive I wouldn't try and punch through a Tinbot -6 necessarily. That'll take a little bit of time. Might not be worthwhile. Might just be too difficult to damage that. Or could be effectively on 9s with the 3 firewall. The -6 to hit, plus the firewall, +3 to defense, etc. But Deferson in turn is a pain to get through when Deferson's got a Tinbot. And so you can take one hacker and it's Deferson, and he does everything that you need, and that gives you all of your hacking. That's what's cool about him, is that he's like, cool, yeah, I'm it. I'm the hacker for this faction. You maybe take a linked picture in the form of probably not the Justice Knight, but potentially the cheap the Crozier you can get away with, and then I'm just letting him set up because I pick him up by his arms and they'll break. You can take the Crozier Knight and the Crozier Hacker, get a picture, put it at the back of the field, and then have Deferson be sort of like slightly more forward postured. And so if your opponent wants to try and neuter your hacker, the first thing they have to do is fight Deferson, and Deferson is behind a Tinbot himself and rolling 2 dice Trinity and reactive. And that's the magic, where it's like, this is just very, very annoying to put down. And so your hacking stays up the entire game. You have, decent quality ARO and active turn hacking forever. That's what makes Deferson useful, and it's not an egregious investment to get that, which then you free up points elsewhere. The list that I played against last time I played against Military Orders went all in on hacking, and it had like a Justice Knight and I think it was an Order Sergeant hacker and Deferson, and it's just like you don't need all of this. You need the one, and then you use the points that you save to take guns, and then you use you need to build out the rest of the infrastructure in the list, and Deferson covers you off cleanly for hacking presence, which is an efficiency that Military Orders otherwise don't necessarily they don't have efficient pieces. They have powerful pieces, although not necessarily more powerful than anyone else's. You're inside Pan-Oceania, so you can look across the fence and see a much better gunfighter than Ballistic Skill 14, no mods. But yeah, you want to take your efficiencies where you can get them. Putting together the second Mormare now. Also a modern sculpt, also quite nice. A little bit of flash, and I'll have a few things to get done after the stream is over, after lunch. I'll go and watch someone play some Slay the Spire or something. That bounced off the ceiling. That's another thing that you don't typically see happen as much with plastic. Oh, but alright. We'll get this Mormare together. We'll put the tail on the dog. We'll probably just blue tack McGregor's Gubbin to her base. We'll blue tack the sniper to his base, and that will probably do us for today. We'll get this done first. Wrap it up. It'll be about 12:30 by then, and we'll have gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 miniatures done in 2 hours. Not too bad. I've absolutely done quicker with plastics and with Unicool, but this isn't that. And this is most of an army in one go, so we'll get the rest done in the Savo. Then I have a Trebuchet to assemble as well. That's also on the... I might show that off before the stream ends. 11 out of how many? How many do I have left to go? After these 11, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, including... I will probably assemble Armand Lemuel, as much as it's a bit of a joke that he appears in this pack. So, a little bit over half done, and I'll give myself a couple of hours this Savo watching a stream to do the others, although I have to bust out the airbrush and help the other half do some airbrushing that they're looking to get done this Savo for an art restoration project, laying some varnish on. I call it an art restoration project. It's the ugliest fucking statue I've ever seen. The that they've fixed up a break on. Cispo Spurs, very impressed. Takes me a couple of hours to ensure all flush and mold lines have been thoroughly removed. So I've rushed through a little bit. These will be handed back to Matty with, the glue all dried, the models all in good shape, with the caveat of I recommend all of these be given a wire brush over the high points, a wire brush, a once over on the mold lines, and a wash. But that's part of the painting process, basically. That's like prep for painting for me. So these are all in a state where you could put these on, where you can put them on the table and play. And then when he gets around to painting them, my recommendation will be, because what you want to do is you want to clean them just before you paint. Because otherwise, if I clean these all now, like if after this, I took these out to the sink and I bunged them all in some soapy hot water, gave them a little bit of a wash, and then handed them back to their owner, and he played with them for a month, they just get finger grease all over them. So I do mold lines after assembly. Sort of. In an ideal world, you clean most of the mold lines off the pieces before they go into the model, because sometimes you can't reach them. But the compromise is that you look at the model after it's assembled and you clean the mold lines that you can see, and you don't worry about the ones that will never be visible to anyone. The risk, if you do it that way, is that if you have a mold line in a hard to reach place, you are going to have to practice some radical acceptance. But given that I am assembling these for someone who would otherwise hate the process themselves, I'm sure that they will be grateful regardless. Okay. Last thing that needs to be glued before we wrap up the stream is McDoggo's tail. We'll get that on now. Washing models before painting. Genius, after 35 years of painting midis, I've learned something new. I'm happy to be of service. But yes, wash, just like gentle soapy water, warm, and then let dry. And it just gets finger grease and dust and all of the enemy here is anything that will cause the primer to release from the model and chip. The thing that I always want to make sure, like I've had models that chip and break, but if you prep the model before painting properly and then varnish, most of the time you can take a little bit of a knocking and not have the model lose too much in the way of paint or chipping. A running battle I had for a very long time was convincing a good friend, a mutual friend of ours, CISPO, Mr. Chris, to please, for the love of God, varnish his models, because he just never did. He just habitually didn't varnish his models, and consequentially, anytime any of them dropped, they would just chip a little bit. And it's like, please, do I varnish? Yes, 100%. If you must varnish miniatures that you are intending to play with. I also think it looks nice, like a satin varnish pulls the miniature sort of visually together. In some cases, it's non-ideal because you have a specific, like you will never get the mini. Varnishing adjusts the finish, basically. But if you are going to handle miniatures and there's any risk, etc., it's just one of those, like, it's a step that you take. It can actually look really nice. But it's just a step that you take that can pull the preventative from any damage. I use and I recommend Vallejo Satin run through an airbrush. It says satin; it'll actually dry quite matte. It's the best I've found in terms of a finish that I like generally for like a nice, clean, tied together model looks cohesive look. And it's pretty durable as well. The easiest for people who are just like, for example, if someone who's never varnished anything before, you've got an airbrush, you'd be totally fine. But for someone who's never varnished anything before and just wants something out of a rattle can, Tester's Dull Coat is the problem with Testers is that it's very matte, and so it's not as the more matte a varnish is, generally speaking, the less durable it is. The more it will wear, because it's a matte finish. The surface is slightly textured rather than being really smooth, and so it will wear more easily. But any varnish is better than none, and so Testor's Dullcoat is what I recommend for anyone who's just being like, I've never varnished a miniature before, what am I supposed to do? You can buy that for $15 a can. It'll last you actually not terribly long. You tend to run through it pretty quickly, but it's worth the investment. Okay, there is half of a Caledonian army put together. Oh, I'm getting a bit peckish, so I'd like to thank everyone who's been along. It's almost 2 hours of streaming. Hope that you've enjoyed this chat. Hope that Maddie is looking forward to getting his models. And that'll do it, I think. That'll do it, I think, for this video. So thank you everyone who's been along this evening. We've had about 20 different people tag along over the course of the video. It's been great to talk to you all, and we will see you next time.